Hello and welcome to Deprogrammed with Keri Smith. Let me just remove that. Sorry. I am your host, Keri. Today is Monday, September 23rd, and we're starting at 2 o'clock today instead of 1 o'clock because I was hoping that the renovation happening would be over by now, but it's still going on. So let me know in the comments if you can hear it, if you can hear the music and the saws and the sanders and stuff. I can hear it. It's a little distracting for me, but I think this microphone's pretty good, and you guys have told me before that it doesn't bother you. So we're just going to go power through it, and rather than waiting longer. Welcome. If it's your first time here, this is a live show that we usually do on Mondays and Fridays at 1 o'clock Central, where we talk about what's in the news. We talk about ideology. We talk about whatever's on your mind, what's on my mind. And we talk about it through the lens of understanding the current chaos in the world, in the West, through the lens of my old ideology, social justice ideology, which is also known as woke ideology. And so if you're here to learn more about that, you've come to the right place, and we welcome you. I see a lot of familiar people in the chat. Good to see you guys. I see you joking about being late. Yeah, I was trying to couple things, hoping that the construction might end, and then also trying to get my screen ready. So one of the things we're going to talk about today, or the main thing we're talking about today that I'm excited about and hopeful about, is a local story. I'm here in Texas. We're one of the states that banned racist, discriminatory DEI, that's diversity, equity, and inclusion practices in the state. Meaning that public universities here in Texas are not allowed to use public funds, that's taxpayer money, our money, to indoctrinate people, to implement racist policies at colleges. And this has resulted in the University of Texas at Austin eliminating their DEI programs. And there's an article, I actually saw this because I saw that my pastor had commented on it, and then I started reading it. There's an article out today and the Austin American Statesman that is a pure piece of propaganda, of woke propaganda. It's the media mourning the loss of these DEI programs. And so we're going to get into that. I have the article queued up, and we're going to read that, and then we're going to look at the bill that they're always talking about, the DEI bill here in Texas, SB 17, because a lot of the people who complain about it haven't actually read it. As you know, a lot of people on the left will often speak the opinions that they're given through the propagandists, opinions that they are given and urged to speak. They mistake these opinions as their own, having never done the work to own that opinion, having never read the source material or watched the source video. So we're going to read the source material. We're going to look at the bill. And I would urge people who think they are against this bill to read it first so they know what they're against. And if you were in conversations with people who say that they oppose bills like this, it helps for you to have read it, and also it helps to ask them, what specific part of the bill do you disagree with? Can you give me the language from the bill? Give me a quote. What is it that you disagree with? That should be easy, right? If you've read it and you oppose it. And you will quickly find that they have not read it. So we're going to go through it. I've got a couple of announcements. Number one, we are reading Hillbilly Elegy for the Deprogrammed book club. This is the book by J.D. Vance, and it's timely. We're going to talk about it before the election. There was a movie made of this. I haven't seen the movie. I'm probably going to try to read the movie. I'm going to read that movie. I'm also going to watch the movie, maybe before our discussion, maybe after, I'm not sure. But we're going to talk about the book on Tuesday, October 15th at 6 o'clock Central. And this is an open book club where you can come if you're a fan of Deprogrammed, if you're interested at all in this book. You can come and talk about it. It's a video discussion. I'm going to do it like the previous ones, where you have to email me. Just email me at deprogrammedpod@gmail.com and tell me you want to be in the book club discussion on October 15th. And I'll give you a link. It's a private link. We don't post the videos publicly. We might at some point with people's permission, but for right now, it's a closed video discussion, so everybody feels comfortable being on camera if they want to, and just being free to give their opinions. So you've got enough time, I think, to read this book. It's not very long. I hope you'll join us. The other announcement is Wednesday, we are back with another Christian panel. That Christian panel with Odin from OMB Reviews, with Brahma Bull, with Michelle from Force of Light Entertainment, and we might have a special guest this Wednesday. That's going to be Wednesday at 6 o'clock Central, and we're going to be talking about the new hit movie, independent movie, Am I Racist by Matt Walsh, which is in theaters. I urge you to go see it. I had a blast. We went with a small group of people that I organized last minute. I had a friend, little ragamuffin, was in town, and my husband and I had some other friends come, and we took a little group. It was on a Tuesday night when we saw it, and the theater was probably 2/3 of the way full, maybe 3/4 on a Tuesday night. I would say 2/3 of the way full, which was very impressive. And I have not laughed that hard in a movie theater in years. It was one of those kind of movies where everyone's laughing, some people uncontrollably. I was one of those people a couple of places. And if you just want to have a good movie going experience, like this is a good one, you're going to laugh. So get your popcorn, go to the theater. If you don't want to be spoiled before Wednesdays when we're doing our panel, so go see Am I Racist by Matt Walsh. And you're going to have a good time. I just predict you're going to have a good time. So let's see. Is Keri going to read her fortune? What does that mean? Well, I'm reading your fortune. If you go see Am I Racist, you're going to have a great time. Is that because of this jacket? I will have you know, look at this jacket. I found this in a thrift store during our recent road trip, my husband and I found this in a thrift store for, I think it was like $3, $4. This beautiful Asian, look on the elbows. Look at that. How did somebody give this up? Just for you to laugh at me, but I love it. So, are we getting rain here? Jennifer says. We got a light sprinkling, but not enough to stop the construction happening outside. So the sanding. Oh, and the hat, says Andrew. Well, this is a Western hat, and this is from my friend Nicole. And I don't know why you consider that a fortune teller hat. What's wrong with you, Andrew? This isn't the top hat. Okay, enough fun. Enough fun. Let's get into this serious topic. We're going to talk about this DEI article in the Austin Statesman. And I'll have you guys know, I paid the money to subscribe to the Austin Statesman just for a year. It was $10 for the year. And I figured I go there enough. It's enough local news. I want to be able to go there and see the propaganda they're putting out. But I paid the $10 so I could read this whole article and talk about it. And then it won't let me log in on this computer. So I had to figure out how to, I've got it finagled over here on a different screen, but I think this is going to work. I've got a different screen joining us. So this is the article today, and you can see here a picture of Alicia Morano, who's the subject. There are 3 subjects of this article, and she's the most prominent one. And there are pictures of her crying. Let me see if I can share with you what I'm talking about, because they had a whole nother section here where they've just got pictures of her crying, and here we go. She's painted as the victim losing her job, a DEI employee who lost her job at UT Austin. Look at this. This one is just photos of her going into the building. So they took these photos in June. Now this article came out today, but they took these photos in June, and she was laid off April 2nd. So somehow she still had access to her office and everything in June. It appears that her last day was sometime in August, although she was technically laid off in April. Anyway, they did this huge profile piece on her. There she is in her office. You can see on the wall there, she has a PhD, by the way. They call her Dr. Marino. a PhD in some bullshit, which is what they usually have. And you can see she's got a little sticker there that says, "I stand with immigrants." Okay. And this is another picture of where she worked. Here she is working sad and forlorn. She looks very forlorn and sad, and she's walking on campus. Presumably, this is meant to make you feel sorry for her because she's leaving campus. Here she is crying. Here she is crying. Again, they took these photos in June. Now, you know what they don't tell you in this article? That she had already acquired another job in bullshit at Trinity University in San Antonio in April. In April, she had already been named the director of the Center for Belonging and Inclusion or something like that. I've got it pulled up here. Here's her title. Director for Student Inclusion and Belonging at Trinity University. Look at that. That was Trinity University's announcement. They named Alicia Morano, PhD, as the new director for Student Inclusion and Belonging as part of a minor reorganization with Student Affairs. Okay, so she's doing the same stuff at this other place. Let's go back to her crying, though. She's a victim. This whole article paints her as, she's a victim of horrible conservatives, these bigots who don't like DEI. She and 49 other staff members lost their jobs because of horrible bigots who don't care about belonging and inclusion. And, this whole thing is faux victimhood. So you got to have her crying. Then you can see there's a bunch of stickers on her desk. These are stickers on the desk of Alicia Morano, it says. And it says equity. And it says first gen equity. So she's got a bunch of equity stickers. Marxist. Woke ideology is Marxist at its core. Equity does not mean equality. Equity means state-sanctioned discrimination on the basis of race and sex and other identity categories. That's what it means. So she is a bona fide racist and sexist who wants people to be treated differently on the basis of race and sex, which is what the woke want, which is what my old religion preaches. That's what equity means. There you go. She's got a bunch of equity stickers. Here she is, looking all sad, going, do they have enough pictures of her in this photo montage? Here she is looking startled that I just lost my job, my DEI job. Oh, no, what's going to happen? Oh, thank goodness I already have another job at another university. There she is going into the center. There's another close-up of her I Stand With Immigrants sticker and her name tag, PhD. The University of Texas at Austin. This is her old division, the Division of Campus and Community Engagement. And then there's a few more of her in her office talking. There's another of her walking somewhere else in the campus and looking contemplative about losing her DEI job. And here's an award she was given at UT Austin before she lost her job, the President's Exemplary Service Award. And here she is posing with that award. And here are some of the things in her office. And this looks like what we see in a lot of kindergartens now, where they are pushing SEI and they're pushing DEI and they're pushing critical race theory and queer theory and they're pushing these new concepts of what they're pushing alongside with DEI, which is belonging. And so you see these. This is, keep in mind, this is an adult woman and her students are adults, right? Okay, and these are the things that are in her office. It's little hearts, and it says, "You are so loved. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. You are always welcome here," and so on. So it's these kind of groomer, overly motherly sort of. It's sort of like the tweets that we get from the government nowadays, where it's like, we see you, we love you. It's like, stop, Biden. That's not the way I want my president to talk to me. And this has become the norm. This has become the norm with this fragile generation. Okay, that's her in the hallway. There she is again. I mean, this is an extensive photo essay of her and her firing. Okay. Now I'm going to go back to the article. Here we go. Ingrid says, oh my gosh. Yes, there's so many photos of her, right? Okay, so here's the piece. And here's the headline. This is today's article by Lily Kepner at the Austin American Statesman. Now, just keep in mind, if you newly left the woke cult, if you're fresh out, you might be learning how to decipher things now, like read things and sort of remove yourself set yourself outside of it and try and look at it in a non-biased way, an unbiased way, and understand where the propaganda is, where the persuasion is, how they're giving you an opinion. And so if you are freshly out of woke, this is a great opportunity to practice that, because this article is full of a point of view. This article assumes certain things to be true that are not true, things that are opinions that I think are incorrect. So it assumes those things to be fact, though. So here's this, you can read the slant, you can decipher the slant of this piece as we go through it. Here's the headline. This was politics. That's a quote. How UT slashing its DEI programs crushed careers and halted a life's work. Okay, so already, how are they framing it in the headline? This is politics. You know what else is politics? Creating a DEI program in the first place. That's politics. Teaching a political ideology, Marxism, to students, indoctrinating them, that's politics. Teaching them that the best way to look at the world is as a struggle for power between competing identity groups, and that we should judge and treat people differently based on their identity groups. Like, that's political, doing that. And in the case of UT Austin, using taxpayer money to do it, using our money to indoctrinate these students. That's political. So you're upset that the response is political? Of course it's going to be. It necessarily has to be, because you made it political. Now it says it crushed careers. Great. In my opinion, great. All of this is presented as a bad thing. This is a great thing. Let me tell you a little something about UT Austin. The last I checked, and it's probably more than this now, but the last I checked, the DEI department at UT Austin had grown to consist of over 100 people in the DEI department. Over 100 people living off the largesse of this publicly funded university. 100. Now, these are not useful people. These are not intelligent people. These are not professors. Some of them technically were professors, but are they teaching how to think? No, they're teaching what to think. They're there to indoctrinate. And a lot of them are not professors. They're admin, they're support staff, they're bureaucrats, essentially. They're barnacles, parasites, living off of the taxpayer. And so it had grown to over 100 people in a DEI department, diversity, equity, inclusion. And it was costing us $13 million a year. $13 million. That's insane. Now, and the numbers are probably higher than that. That was last I checked. So should the careers have been crushed? Yes. Yes. Thank you, UT. Thank you, Texas, for passing SB 17. Okay, so let's go through it. Again, you guys tell me if this sound outside is bothering you. I don't know if you can hear it. I can hear it. It's okay. Okay, here we go. In the web of the University of Texas, Alicia Morano was one spindle in a massive wheel of student support. Now, right off the bat here, I agree with you, author. I agree with you. A spindle in a massive wheel, but not of student support, of student indoctrination. One spindle in she was a cog in a machine of Marxist indoctrination. A publicly funded Marxist indoctrination, of racist indoctrination. That's what she was, a cog in a machine, yes. Her job tailored to help a neglected student population and their specific needs. Her newly painted corner office in the Student Services Building, decorated with cards from undocumented students she mentored. Undocumented students, do you mean illegal immigrants who are enrolled there? And we know where they are. We know they're there. Okay. Decorated with cards from illegal immigrants who were students. She mentored before January 1st green plants and a UT President's Exemplary Service Award given to her in the spring. Was part of a buzzing atmosphere that made the Division of Community and Campus Engagement home for so many students. The last thing on her mind was losing that space, right? Because she's entitled to it, right? They're entitled to other people paying for this. But on April 2nd, 4 months after Senate Bill 17, a state law that bans diversity, equity, and inclusion offices and related functions at public universities, changed the scope of Morano's work significantly and restructured that very school support wheel. The career she had known for the past 7 years would come to a screeching halt, except it didn't, because she jumped ship immediately and went to Trinity University, which is a private university in San Antonio that can go ahead and do racist indoctrination, because SB 17 doesn't apply to private universities. So, this rat found another ship immediately. She got to the office at 8 a.m. after her 50-minute commute, walked through the glass doors on the third floor, and began preparing for her financial aid workshop. By 9 a.m., she received a calendar invitation from an unknown sender, meeting attendance required. In less than 3 minutes, a UT Human Resources representative told Morano and her colleagues on that call that they were being terminated. No one had the function available to unmute. In an instant, all of the programs that Morano and her colleagues had built were gone. Quote, I was at a loss for words. By the way, programs that we, the taxpayer, paid for, that we paid for, including her salary. I'm just going to make that a little larger. Here we go. I was at a loss for words. There she is crying. Because you can't have a phony victim article without the tear picture. Okay. Morano was one of 49 former DEI staff members who UT President Jay Hartzell laid off April 2nd in a reorganization after UT's compliance with SB 17. Later, he would tell faculty that he believed UT had been compliant with SB 17 on January 1st when the DEI ban went into full effect. But, quote, it's been clear that some disagreed. At 1 p.m. that day, Hartzell sent a university-wide email announcing that UT would close the Division of Community and Campus Engagement due to redundancy after evaluating its programs once the DEI functions were eliminated. So it's like once they took out the toxic DEI Marxist indoctrination, the racist and sexist indoctrination, then there was no reason to have all these pointless careers. I mean, they're pointless to begin with. The point being, whatever point they had was to instill an ideology at the college, to instill and uphold woke religion, woke cult beliefs. And once you remove that, they have no purpose. They're redundant. So he's like, we have to get rid of these. After nearly 2 weeks of silence, he said at a faculty council meeting that it was also due to conservative pressure. I love that sounds in the Austin American Statement. It makes it sound so scary. Conservatives. Oh no, not conservatives. What happened that spring day was a turning point. To the staff, it was a betrayal. Their jobs aligned with a personal passion to support people on campus who needed it. Now, again, is the frame of this article, does it sound like a journalist? Is it critical at all? Or is it telling you a narrative that's very much in line with the DEI narrative? It's not critical at all. It's just, these people were here to help people. They have a personal passion. It was okay. It's talking about their jobs. The DEI office was a way to repair historical inequities that kept students from fully succeeding. Barriers the staff had often experienced too. What are those barriers? I'm sorry. What are these historical inequities that keep you from succeeding? Because we, up until a certain point, we had removed legalized discrimination from law. Then we started putting it back in. Then we started saying, wait a minute, no, you can discriminate on the basis of race. As long as you're discriminating against Asian people or white people, you can do it. You can discriminate on the basis of sex, as long as you're discriminating against men. We started putting it back in and saying, no, it is okay. So what are these barriers? They're always vague, right? After months of adapting to SB 17, they certified their program's compliance and felt safe again. On April 2nd, it was all taken away. Anti-DEI laws have swept through Republican-led states across the nation since 2023. Texas was the second state after Florida to pass such a law. God bless Texas. That's my opinion on that. State Senator Brandon Creighton, the author of SB 17, said that DEI is ineffective, divides students, hurts innovation, and discourages free speech. And he would be right. Ahead of May hearings to assess each university system's compliance, he warned chancellors to fully comply with the law or face the potential loss of state funding and other legal consequences. Exactly a week later, Hartzell announced the layoffs. Quote, the actions by the University of Texas demonstrate that they are taking steps to ensure compliance with SB 17, the strongest ban on DEI in the nation, Creighton said in a statement to the American Statesman. Now that we are in a new era, Texas taxpayer-funded higher education can return to a merit-based framework that will better serve their students and faculty. UT spokesman Mike Rosen said that as a public institution, UT is obligated to be responsible stewards of public money, yes, and that the cuts will increase the institution's operational efficiency, yes. He said all students will have support, quote, without regard to their protected characteristics, end quote. Yes, which is the way it should have always been. You should not be treating students differently based on what color they are, if they're male or female, whatever these identity categories they say they're in, you know, you should not be discriminating against them. Not with public money, anyway. These private schools are deciding we're going to do what we want. We're going to keep doing racist DEI all we want. We'll go ahead. But not with public money. Of the laid off UT staffers, several were alums like Morano. Some had worked at the university for more than a decade. They had university-covered health insurance and bills to pay, but also students who counted on them for support. So again, this part's supposed to make us feel sorry for them. When these are people who are doing make work, it's not real work. They're doing make work, and their whole job, their whole function is to spread an evil ideology, to indoctrinate students into this evil ideology. They have health insurance bills. Yeah, you know who else has health insurance bills? The taxpayers who are paying for these make work indoctrination positions. And so I'm sure a lot of the taxpayers are happy not to have to cover this extra $13 million a year. Maybe we would rather that go towards our health insurance premiums. So here are some of these pictures that they have in the whole photo spread on her. That's her going into an office. Okay. Now here's the second of four different people who they sort of profile. Although again, Alicia Morano is their number one person that they're profiling in this piece. But let's read about some of the others. To UT alum Ruben Cantu, whose father mopped the UT main building's floors. Okay, so I had to read this twice to understand they're just bringing his dad in to let you know his dad worked there, but he's an alum. So to UT alum Ruben Cantu, bringing his equity-focused startup to the university and leading academic programs for other disadvantaged students, quote, was throwing down the rope and making sure I wasn't the only one who was going to make it. Okay. Leading academic programs for other disadvantaged students. They're pretty vague about what that means. You know what that means? Discrimination on the basis of race and sex. That's what it means. Here's another one. To Ryan Sutton, who stayed to work full-time in the division after a fellowship with the Hogg Foundation for Mental Health. UT was a place he could transform the experience for Black students and connect them to resources that they didn't know could help them profoundly. And to Lily Heim, being a program director or a program coordinator at the Gender and Sexuality Center was a dream job. They don't have a picture of Lily Heim in this article, but we can all imagine what she looks like. Okay. Lily Heim. It was a dream job, a way to build more community for LGBTQ plus students, particularly among students of color and nurture a place that was safe from political attacks. Which is, does any of this sound like the purpose of a university? Does any of this remind you at all of anything that John Stuart Mill talks about when he's talking about the purpose of an institution of learning? No, because it doesn't. It's not. This is not what a university should be. This is an indoctrination daycare. Okay, so then it continues. On July 5th, they all worked their last day. Oh no. So it was July 5th was their last day. This piece is coming out today, September 23rd. Okay. So they were laid off in April. They continued to get to work there until July 5th. Let's continue. Quote, "This isn't my fault," Morano said. "This is politics." Yeah, your job is politics. So it's being corrected with politics, with more politics. Okay, now here's a little heading at the top of the next section. Quote, the heading is, "I saw myself in those black and brown kids." Do you ever notice that woke people insist on talking about black and brown bodies? They use that word bodies a lot. I'm shocked that she didn't actually use that word. But they're also, it's this intense obsession with and focus on all of the different identity groups and categories that they tell us we're supposed to break people down into and treat people differently on the basis of these groups. And so there's this intense focus on it. So here she is saying, I saw myself in those kids, but just the black and brown ones, right? Okay. Morano, now they go on to describe her. Morano has cropped black and silver hair, wears tortoiseshell glasses, and carries a wide smile. She lives in Buda with her wife and enjoys rock climbing and hiking. She has a doctorate degree in higher education leadership. But this life wasn't a given for Morano. With every step forward, she would face and have to overcome challenges, some rooted in American history. Well, whoop-dee frickin' do, that makes her no different than the majority of Americans. Like, spoiler, she had to overcome challenges. Like, yes, that's what life is, okay? Now, to explain these challenges, do they talk about the unique challenges that she faced in her life? No, they're going to go back 200 years and tell you about some other people that have nothing to do with how she grew up. I'm serious. Like, they have to reach back 200 years. So here they go. These are her unique challenges. If you go back 200 years in anybody's past, I'm sure you can find some much worse challenges than what that person is dealing with today. Okay, let's go back 200 years ago. Wow, she's that old? She's that old. Okay. Texas Sheep Lady says, but Keri, her challenges were big. Right. Hers were big. Not yours, though. Just hers. Super Base, by the way, thank you so much for the 5 Deprogrammed memberships. Thanks for supporting Deprogram. I so appreciate you. And if you guys picked up one of those memberships, drop Super Base said thank you in the chat. Okay. So let's hear about the challenges that she had to overcome. Okay. 200 years ago, San Antonio quartered off its west side for Mexican Americans who were legally barred from buying property elsewhere. Throughout Texas, from 1848 until 1928, Mexican Americans faced violence, sometimes at the hands of Texas Rangers, attacks on voting rights, school segregation, and severe discrimination. Morano was born in that same neighborhood 200 years ago. No! Do you see how they try to connect this in your mind? She grew up on the mean streets 200 years ago where Mexican people face all these barriers. No, she didn't. This girl was she born in the 1990s? I'm not talking about the 1890s. How old is she? I think she was born maybe even 2000. This girl is a millennial. Eclectic company, her great-grandparents did not have it easy. Exactly. And that's my point, is they have to reach back to the great-grandparents, reach back to any of our great-grandparents. You're going to find a very different story than today. Don't try to claim that as your oppression. Don't try to claim somebody else's struggle as your struggle. I don't care if they're your great-grandparents. It's not your struggle. Tell me about how she grew up. Oh, you're not going to? Okay. Well, they go into it a little bit in this paragraph, but what they're about to describe in this paragraph is the reality for a lot of kids growing up. It's not limited to race. This is, they mentioned that she is the first, that her parents and grandparents did not go to college. That's not that different than most people. There are a lot of people in this chat who were the first people in their family to go to college. My parents did go to college, but that my grandparents did not. There's that gap. So am I supposed to go back and tell you about my struggle because my grandparents didn't go to no. That's my grandparents' story. Okay, here we go. Marina was born into that same neighborhood. So they just described 200 years ago, and then they're like, that's where she was born. She was born in that same neighborhood about 80 miles south of Boston. It was a majority Latino and low-income neighborhood. Her school district was the poorest in San Antonio. But by middle school, she was convinced she wanted to go to college. Good for her. Something that many at her school doubted was a possibility for them, and something neither her parents nor grandparents had done. Okay, so there's another picture of her in the office. Her freshman year of high school, Representatives with Upward Bound, a federal support program that helps first-generation low-income students pursue higher education, made a presentation at her school. Wow, so are you saying that we as taxpayers pay for federal programs to go and reach out to students in low-income areas? Oh, we do? What a struggle. What a struggle for her that she faced, that there was this program that everyone else pays for to come in and help her. They're not framing it. They never frame these things as a positive. They're never like, thank God we were doing that in the late 90s or, whatever this was, or in the aughts, thank God that was happening. No, instead it's, this is her struggle. Okay. This organization came in to help her go to college. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. You're not painting the picture of that you're painting of, oh, she faced challenges. Yes, everyone. Again, everyone. Her freshman year in high school, Representatives with Upper Bound, a federal support program that helps first-generation low-income students pursue higher education, made a presentation at her school. Quote, I took a flyer home to show my mom, and I said, I want to do this, Moreno recalls. Moreno learned how to apply for financial aid and write a college essay. She also shared what she learned in the program with her friends who did not participate, motivated to make sure that they had the same support she did. When she enrolled at the University of North Texas, the challenges she faced expanded. Oh my gosh, are we about to hear about the unusual challenges now? She took out student loans when financial aid didn't cover expenses. So did everyone. I mean, yes, there's an elite few who don't, but do you guys in the chat, are they painting a picture that's uncommon to you? I'm guessing not. I had a little bit of financial aid, and I also took out student loans. Same thing. Do I go through life saying, oh, the challenges? No. And then it continued. She worked 2 jobs, but she still sometimes had to make $10 less a week. Yeah. You know who else worked 2 jobs? I worked 2 jobs in college. I worked 3 jobs in college. So what is this? Like, the unique challenges. Like, yes, this is the reality for many, 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 many people. Kevin Anderson, I took out loans too. I struggled, all caps. John, welcome to being an adult, right? Isn't it amazing how they paint this? It's just pretty amazing. Today, it's lived experience, yes. Ingrid, I took out loans for college, so is my daughter, and we are paying them back. Yes, you and me both, Ingrid. Cynthia says, my generation was the first to do college too, and I was one of the few that did. I worked, I took out loans, I got scholarships, the usual, and poor they, them, she, her, whatever. Exactly. It's just absurd how this propaganda piece is painting this as you keep waiting for where are the unique challenges, okay? They keep calling her disadvantaged student. Like, where are the unique challenges that's like not something that's common to the American experience. This is a country where people do pull themselves up by their bootstraps, where first generation students do get federal aid and get their fellow man to help pay for them to get opportunities. Like, that you can do that in America. We have more of a movement between classes in this country than any other country I can think of. Like, people can move between classes here pretty easily. I mean, they're pushing us with this communism stuff on the left. They're pushing us towards a place where you're not going to be able to do that. But none of this is unusual, what they're talking about. And by the way, Cynthia, it's in another article that I read about her, but guess what her pronouns are, Alicia Morano. I want you guys in the chat to guess. Hers are very special. Her pronouns are she, they. You know, one of each. So you never know. You never know if you're using the right one. She, they. Mm-hmm. That's not a joke. That's real. Pie hole. Z Snyder. Therese. Okay, we'll continue. Okay, so again, they're like, oh my gosh, she had financial aid. She had student loans. She worked 2 jobs. Not that unusual. We'll continue. As a college mentor at her college's Office of Outreach, she noticed a gap in need based on a student's zip code. As part of her mentoring, she had visited high schools where students drove new cars, practiced on insulated football fields, and did not have to apply for financial aid. 2 days later, she could find herself visiting a school without those resources and where students needed someone to tell them that they could pursue their dreams anyway. Again, it is unrealistic to think that you're going to live in a society where everyone has the same level of wealth. The Marxists, the socialists, the communists, they push this whole idea. And let me just remove this for a second, that, you know, we're not going to reach equality until everyone has the same. And that means taking from some and giving to others. In other words, they don't want a society of meritocracy where you keep the fruits of your labor and where success pays off. They don't want a society where success pays off. They want everyone to get the same regardless, which means there's no incentive to succeed or to work or do anything. I mean, that's the future that they envision. And it's just absurd to say, like, you know, some of the schools that I mentored to were rich and some were poor. Yeah, that's the way of the world. When I was first out of college, one of the jobs that I worked was teaching SAT prep. I taught SAT prep for the Princeton Review. So this is where you go in and you teach 11th graders how to study for taking the SAT, like how to beat the test, how to get a higher score on the SAT. So I would come in after school and teach these 11th graders, and I went to all different kinds of schools. Now, you had the SAT prep classes that I taught were not an inexpensive thing, and so of course you're going to have some classes, like I was at Santa Monica High School, for example, in Santa Monica in LA, and that was a wealthier school, and you're going to have wealthy students in that class. And then I would also go to the inner city in LA, to schools that didn't have the same resources, with students who came from poor families. And do you know what we did for them? And it's just like in this article where they talk about sort of nonchalantly that there was a federal program that comes in and helps these students. There are a lot of resources that we as Americans provide for our fellow man. And so Princeton Review, where I worked, we would offer discounted classes for low-income schools. And so the classes, I taught the very same SAT prep class, regardless of whether I was at the rich school or the poor school. The difference was, at the poor school, I think they paid a third or a fourth of what they paid at the rich school. We gave them an extremely discounted version of it, and some of them didn't pay anything to be there. And I also noticed a difference between the students. I'll just say some of the rich kids didn't care as much. Like, you could tell they have lived this life of monetary privilege. Like, a lot of rich kids are, you can imagine. And so some of them didn't, they were sort of, their parents were like, you have to do this. And they didn't really, it was almost like some of them took it for granted. Not all of them, of course, but some of them. There were a few who took it for granted and really kind of blew it off. But those kids who showed up at the low income school who were getting the reduced cost classes, like they really wanted to be there and they were working their butts off and they took it seriously. And the point of me mentioning this anecdote from my life is just like, again, there's nothing unusual about that. She's like, oh, I noticed that some students grow up in wealthier homes and some students grow up in poor homes. Yes, that's the nature of life. So, okay. So she continues. She said, students needed someone at those poorer schools, basically, to tell them they could pursue their dreams anyway. Well, they do. They've got people coming in. Somebody came into your school, didn't they? And said, here's a program where you can get money to apply for a university if you come from a low-income area. My point is that it's not this like dystopia, what do they call it? The white supremacist patriarchy, the system that doesn't care about disadvantaged students or poor students. Like, that is not America. And it's not even borne out in their articles because it's talking about the resources that they have for these areas. They want us to believe in this dark fantasy version of America that doesn't exist. They want us to hate our country. They want us to believe these lies about how we're set up as a patriarchy and we're set up as this white supremacist country. So she continues, I saw myself on those black and brown kids, Morano said, and I was like, that's not right. That's not right? What's not right? That some people have more than others? What about talent? Is it not right that some have more talent than others? Is it not right that some people have more skill than others if they put more time in? Like, is that not right? Is everybody supposed to have the exact same amount of everything? Morano wasn't the only one who noticed that pattern. The Division of Diversity and Community Engagement, formed at UT in 2007, was created not only to be a resource for students, but to help address, quote, systemic disparities in underserved Central Texas communities, a mission that aligned deeply with Morano and others who valued the importance of that help and belonging. Oh, I don't have this on the screen now. I'm reading it. There's that word, belonging. That's one of the cult words. That's a woke cult word. When you see that one was worked into the language a few years ago. That's one of the newer ones. It's sort of pushing inclusion out a little bit. Some of them prefer belonging now to inclusion. Who it valued the importance of help and belonging. So you see how even the author of this Austin American Statesman piece uses the cult words herself? Like, she speaks the cult language. She is in the cult. So there's another picture of her. Now they're going to one of the other students they briefly mentioned, or one of the other DEI staff, Sutton, okay? Coming from Howard University, a historically Black institution, Sutton knew what it meant to be in a place where students see themselves in their peers, school leadership, curriculum, and teachers, and he wanted to support that. He was approached to come to UT because a sense of belonging, there's that word again, there's the cult word, ding, 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 ding. Because a sense of belonging for students of color, even with the Division of Diversity in place, was rare. At UT, only 5.4% of the student population is Black. More than 30% is white. Do you know what now, of course, you don't have to be from Texas to go to UT Austin, but if you're curious, the percentages, they make that sound like to I guess, lower IQ people, that sounds terrible. Like, only 5.4% is Black, right? The percentage of the Black population in Texas is like 10 point something percent. So it's half, right? It's not a 1-for-1, exactly. It's not like an equal percentage of Black people are going there, but it's not, it's not like the percentage of Black people in Texas is 100% or 90% or 80 or whatever. So that's not that far off. And then it says more than 30% is white. Okay, so the percentage of the population in Texas that's white is, I think it's 38%. So that's also less than, it's not a 1-for-1. I just like to throw those things out sometimes because of people who are not very good at math or who don't understand percentages. A lot of times they fly off the handle with stuff like this. Or like that when they look at representation in the movies, for example, they're like, only 25% of characters are Black, and that means that we have more work to do. We've read headlines like this here on the show. It's like 25%, that's like almost double the population of Black people in the US. Like that's more than representative. That's twice as representative, you know? So just a little side note. So he says, it shook me pretty hard, Sutton said of his arrival. After his fellowship, he worked at the Heman Stewart Center for Black Males, partnering with community mental health resources. He was promoted to Associate Dean of DEI at Dell Medical School. They have the DEI at the medical school in 2021, and he developed trainings to illustrate how recognizing differences when treating a patient improved their outcome. Now, Haim, she's the one that works at the LGBTQI Gender Studies Center. Okay. Haim worked at the check-in desk at the 20-year-old Gender and Sexuality Center. Again, taxpayer dollars paying for all of this crap. Welcoming people into a space filled with books and bean bags and paper cranes. It offered mental health drop-ins, weekly conversations on the experience of being transgender, and special groups for LGBTQ plus people of color. I mean, you really small groups. Okay. Where Haim saw participants, quote, come alive with each other. Does this sound like an institution of higher learning, like what it's supposed to be? Bean bags, paper cranes, weekly meetings about the experience of being transgender. I mean, okay. Student advocacy brought many of those spaces to life, but UT invested in them too. Outside of the division, 6 UT-sponsored student groups called the Multicultural Engagement Center their home, with a budget and support staff. Hold on one second. With a budget and support staff to prop up the community they so needed. UT recruited Cantu, an East Austinite and first-generation student who became a Longhorn, to start the Office of Inclusive Innovation and Entrepreneurship to mentor and teach underrepresented students like himself. In 2017, Morano pursued a graduate degree at UT and studied how minority students form their identities. This is her graduate work. This is her master's. She got her master's at UT in how minority students form their identities. Again, identity being one of the central elements, the most important elements to identity Marxism, to woke ideology. Woke ideology, social justice ideology, whatever you want to call it, identity Marxism. It's a religion. It's a belief system that says the best way to look at the world is as a struggle for power among competing identity groups. And so, of course, she does her master's on something related to this Marxist belief system she's in and what she's preaching and teaching. So she studied how minority students form their identities and navigate educational systems. Captivated, Morano then pursued her doctorate. At the same time, she worked at the division to support first-year minority and first-generation students. Soon, another opportunity sparked Morano's passion. Monarch, a program at UT for undocumented, mixed status, or immigrant students, was hiring a staff coordinator. So, undocumented is one of their new words, the woke cult's words. They try and use it instead of illegal immigrant. They try and use it instead of illegal because they want to take emphasis and focus away from the fact that these people are here illegally, and they want us to start to accept that they are citizens. They're just not documented. They're citizens. They just don't have their paperwork. That's why they want you to call them undocumented citizens rather than illegal immigrants. So it continues. The program served a population that experienced some of the same challenges as other disadvantaged students: fear of deportation, difficulty getting a job, and struggling to navigate a campus that didn't understand the students' rights. Also, they always treat these identity groups in woke ideology, they treat them as if everybody in that group is the same. So they pretend that all white people are advantaged, that all men are advantaged, that straight people are all advantaged, that anybody who's black or brown, to use their descriptions, are that they're automatically disadvantaged. Anybody who's gay is automatically disadvantaged, and they treat them all the same. They don't look at you as individuals. This is a collectivist ideology, meaning they treat you as members of a collective, as group members, just like white supremacists do. The woke do the same thing. So it doesn't matter if you're Oprah. They will say, yes, but Oprah is a black woman. She's in two marginalized or oppressed groups or disadvantaged groups. So therefore, Oprah is more disadvantaged than a straight white homeless man. And they say this with a straight face. I'm sure some of you have had these theoretical conversations with them, trying to understand better, and they will say crazy shit like that. Like, they will just say that. They believe that. It's a crazy religion. So when they say this about disadvantaged students, okay, they automatically are, what they mean is based on identity group. They are determining if you're disadvantaged based on what identity you are. And that's it. Not on if you're actually disadvantaged or not. So it continues. These were students who had asked for a staff member to help them for years. Morano became that person. Over the next 2 years, she grew to expect that asking a student in Monarch if they were okay brought them to tears. Oh my gosh. No one had ever asked them that. She helped a student whose professor had iced them out after they disclosed their immigration status. She helped another with work authorization, and the student ran to Morano's office after they secured it. She attended an open mic hosted by students to hear their stories in their own words. Quote, "It took everything in me not to cry because their stories were so powerful," she said. "Despite all odds, despite all the barriers, they're here and persevering. I just thought it was so beautiful." This is a photo from the Texas Senate Education Committee discussing the protests at UT and SB 17. Arguing with the wall, that's the next section. Under President Gregory Fenves' leadership from 2015 to 2020, UT's diversity resources won awards. Oh, they got awards. All this money that we taxpayers are spending on this crap, $13 million a year, at least over 100 people, barnacles on this ship that we're paying for, and it was winning awards. And the university reached its highest graduation rates yet. Did it? What about highest achievement? Like, I'd like to see the scores of those students. Just because you're graduating them, we know what happens at high schools where they're told they have to pass students because they don't want a bad look demographically. That's happening at woke schools. Boosting outcomes for students from underrepresented backgrounds too. So then it talks about George Floyd. So it goes, after a white police officer killed George Floyd, a black man in Minneapolis, igniting social justice protests across the nation, Hartzell, then new to the office, committed to doing even more to support black students on campus. By 2023, the diversity division had more than 40 staff members in dozens of programs and benefited from donations exceeding $1.8 million, according to an open records request. But in January of 2023, a political fight over DEI bubbled up nationally. The Manhattan Institute, an influential conservative think tank, released draft legislation for how to eliminate DEI at colleges. Good for them, finally doing something. In February, Governor Greg Abbott sent an executive order barring DEI in state hiring, and then Florida drafted a bill. Morano and Heim were not worried at first. Working in immigration and with LGBTQ plus pupils, politics had affected their students before. But this anti-DEI crusade was catching up to them faster than they could feel. There's another picture of her walking on the campus, looking all sad. On May 8, 2023, a Texas House Committee on Higher Education hearing to discuss SB 17, the anti-DEI in colleges bill, lasted 19 hours. More than 100 people stayed hunched over in stiff auditorium chairs until 3:30 a.m. to defend the programs. On their way to work, Heim got off the bus at a stop early to drop off a comment card against the bill at the Capitol. After hours, they pored over the bill's text with colleagues. They, They're talking about this girl, Haim. They. There's another they. There's two theys in this article. Two they, them theys. There's two them theys. Well, one of them's a she they, even more special and rare. Okay. There's a she they and a them they. I feel like playing Who's on First. A month later, Abbott signed SB 17 into law. At a meeting with Morano's center afterwards, she tried to comprehend the bill's purpose. In mid-December, she got a message from her boss. UT's legal department was reviewing Monarch. Until then, she had been told the program, which was not race-based, would be safe. 4 days before Christmas, Morano sat at her work from home desk and joined a Zoom meeting with her colleagues and a lawyer from UT's legal department who informed them that the Monarch program had legal and reputational concerns. Quote, I put on a brave face. I tried to argue as best I could, but I felt like I was arguing with a wall, Morano said. The program was shuttered. After the meeting, she sobbed. There's a lot of sobbing in this piece, right? You're really supposed to feel for these victims, these DEI cog in the machine victims in this evil machine. You're really supposed to feel their pain. Who, by the way, once again, just reminding me, latecomers, this DEI shill, this grifter, has already gotten another job doing the same thing at Trinity University in San Antonio. Okay, which they don't mention here. They don't tell you that. After the meeting, she sobbed. She carried the weight of the news with her through the holidays. She carried confusion, too. There were other programs for undocumented students across the country, but none had been shut down, she reasoned. Why was hers different? Well, because yours is rooted in Marxist identitarianism and indoctrination and racism, and it's being done so with public dollars. Like, you clearly went and found another program quickly at a private school, but this was a public school. And thankfully, we live in a state, the great state of Texas, that had decided finally, hey, guess what? We're not going to spend taxpayer money to indoctrinate students with racism and to discriminate on the basis of race. We're not doing that. That's why. There you go. Answered your question. Why was hers different? What would she tell her students? Here's the picture. Again, this is not a kindergarten. This is a college. This is a college setting, but we got these little kindergarten things here. You are so loved. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. You are always welcome here. The staff members the Statesman interviewed said that UT's legal department, the office charged with ensuring UT's compliance with the law, made most decisions in December, 1 month before SB 17 was set to go into effect, and 6 months after the law was passed. At the same meeting, Morano learned the school also closed the Multicultural Engagement Center, though staff had adapted the center to be open to all students. Pause here at this sentence. This part cracked me up when I was reading this earlier today. So they got all nervous because SB 17 passed. And they're like, what can we do to try and protect all these crappy, organizations and centers and jobs that we've created with DEI, all this bullshit? What can we do? And so they decided, hey, maybe we should stop discriminating against people on the basis of race at our Multicultural Engagement Center. They were like, let's do that. So they tried to save it by saying, okay, we're going to let white people come in too. Like, that's what that means. It says she learned the school had closed the Multicultural Engagement Center, though the staff had adapted the center to be open to all students. So as a last-ditch effort, they were like, oh, okay, well, I guess we'll let all the students use this resource that they're paying for, that we're all paying for. I guess we'll let everyone use it and we'll quit discriminating on the basis of identity, right? That'll save us. That part just kills me. That kills me. There's a lot of these multicultural centers like this at different colleges and universities that are like this. I'm sure you guys saw the viral video from last year of I forget what university it was, but it was in a student center like this where these Black students start going off on and harassing these two white male students and telling them they have to leave because this is a space for students of color. They're not allowed there. So that just made me laugh. They tried to look at the really the way that the author slips this in the least offensive language possible, like really massages it. So you have to be paying attention when you're reading this to understand that the Multicultural Engagement Center was not multicultural or multi-race or multi-ethnic. It was discriminating on the basis of race. And then to try and save itself, it quote, adapted the center to be open to all students. But that didn't work. That wasn't enough to save it. So it was also being closed. Separately, the Gender and Sexuality Center closed and the Women's Community Center opened in its place. So they tried to go back to the old name. When I was at Duke University and I was getting indoctrinated and all this crap, it was always called, so this was the late 90s, it was called the Women's Center, or it was called Women's Studies. Well, woke keeps evolving. This evil ideology keeps evolving. And at a certain point, calling anything woman, like having woman in the title, was offensive. And so a lot of those departments at colleges got changed from like women's studies to gender and sexuality studies. And if they had a women's center, it got changed to gender and sexuality center. At Duke, I lived in the women's studies dorm. I guarantee you, I haven't looked it up, but I guarantee you that if that's still around, it's now called the gender and sexualities dorm. I'm sure. There's no way they could keep that name. You know, women's a dirty thing now. It's exclusive. So anyway, so it says separately, the Gender and Sexuality Center closed and the Women's Community Center opened in its place. Parentheses, later, the Women's Community Center was notified April 2nd that it also would be shut down. Yes. Yes, we have a lot to celebrate in this article. If you're a Texan especially, like, this is all great news. I know we're reading through how they frame it can be quite annoying, how they frame it like it's this great loss. And so we have to, I just want to remind you, we cut all this out of UT Austin, guys. Good job. Good job, Texas. Good job, Texans. So they closed that down too. As spring came, Morano pivoted from working at Monarch to lead the Global Leadership Program, a job that she had concurrently in September. In March, Morano received her Presidential Service Award. She started planning for the next school year. Heim greeted the same students and some new ones to the new center. Cantu still taught his classes. Sutton, whose new job as Associate Dean of Dell Medical School, became defined by helping the school comply with SB 17, pushed onward, now in charge of employee and student success. But some students and higher education advocates also warned of a fearful climate growing at UT amid apparent over-compliance with SB 17. Students pushed for the Multicultural Engagement Center to reopen, and undocumented students mourned their loss of support. You mourn your loss of support. You are here illegally. Maybe have some gratitude about that. I mean, again, trying to look at things as the absolute negative and painting things as a negative. You are here and going to a public university illegally, but you lost this little extra bit of support. I'm sure you didn't lose the financial support. On April 2nd, Sutton walked into the office of his boss, whose eyes were red and watery. It's a lot of crying. After a year and a half of a roller coaster of meetings, stress, and planning over compliance, he knew what was coming. It's over, Sutton recalls thinking. Now, this next section is called I Saw Red. April 2nd is crystal clear for Morano. The orange conference room where colleagues gathered after the call, some reduced to tears, more tears. There's tears all over this article. Some reduced to tears and shaking in disbelief. The confused look of students at the workshop asking what happened, her wife visiting her to make sure she was okay, the desire to just go home, but staying, determined to be there for students despite it all. Then Morano wasn't ready to process. After the semester ended, she avoided her office, imagining the plants losing their green color. 3 to 4 weeks later, she broke down. Okay, so more tears. Quote, I could feel everything in my throat, she said. I wanted to scream. Again, the taxpayer decided you shall not use our money to do racist indoctrination. That's what happened here. You did not want to accept it, okay, but you already found another gig at a private school that will allow you to do that. So UT estimates it recouped about $8.3 million total from the staffing and related expenses due to SB 17 going into effect and the April 2nd layoffs. 257 programs were cut. 257 programs were cut, accounting for an additional $2.6 million in savings. That's still not the $13 million. I'm sure there's still more largesse they could cut, but that's a great start. 257 programs cut, 49 employees, DEI staff, and over 10 million recouped per year. Wonderful. And the kids are not getting this mainlined indoctrination. It was a bombshell hitting people's plans. Cantu lost his university health insurance. Well, that's usually what happens when you lose your job. That's also not unusual. That's happened to every single person in this chat who had an employer health insurance. The difference is a lot of us have not worked for the public, and so our health insurance was not covered by the taxpayer like yours was. So when we lost it. So anyway, tiny violin for Cantu, who lost his university health insurance. He lost that. He lost his ability to reach new students and the hope of a promotion to associate professor that he had so coveted. Quote, no matter where I went in the UT system, Governor Abbott still had his thumb on me, Cantu said. Yeah, you're at a public university, dude. Cantu relocated part-time to Brownsville, where he leads student programs about executive leadership, entrepreneurship, and project management, which he hopes to eventually expand statewide. Sutton opened a private practice in psychological assessment and forensic evaluation, and he accepted an associate professor position at UT's College of Education. Heim is back in school, always learning, woke, always doing the work. Morano said she will keep advocating for educational opportunities for all students. So they don't mention here, Morano is now working at Trinity University and is the director of student inclusion and belonging, doing the same old crap. Therapy helped Morano. So did being there with the students in the final days. Morano's last work event was scheduled April 24th, a mental health workshop for her students that night. It's all this mental health. Again, this is a university. This is a school of higher learning. Mental health, beanbags, paper cranes. A mental health workshop for her students that night. Before the workshop, she and Heim had arranged to walk over to a pro-Palestinian teach-in on the South Mall on campus. Okay. Yeah. I love how they make it sound so innocent. But of course, she's at the pro-Palestinian riot that took place at UT Austin. We remember that back in April. So she and Heim, the one from the LGBT Center, decided to walk over, just walk over to that pro-Palestinian teach-in. From a posted agenda, they understood that the teach-in would involve lectures, art workshops, study breaks, and food. Morano dragged a cooler full of water given the heat that day. But no one was at the mall. They walked to Speedway and heard the chaos before they saw it. Morano and Heim went to the front of the crowd, shocked by the number of police and riot gear they saw patrolling what became a pro-Palestinian protest. It was a riot, and they did not have permission to be in the spaces they were in on campus and to be intimidating other students. And I am not one of these people who poo-pooed the police response there, not at all. I'm glad they came in, and I'm glad they said, hey, you're not going to set up campsites and turn UT Austin into the same, shithole that we see happening at these Northeastern universities and in Los Angeles. Like, that's not going to happen here. You're not going to do that. You don't have permission to do that. You can't do that. A protest is one thing. Setting up an encampment is quite another. Intimidating students who want to go to class is quite another. Disrupting classes is quite another. Trashing a campus is quite another. So she said, it says they were shocked by the number of police and riot gear. Fearing for their students, they linked arms with them in front of state police who were on horseback corralling the crowd. Morano and Heim were physically protecting the students for the first time. This is the crescendo of the piece, right? What brave heroes they are. It's too bad they got cut because of the evil conservatives. They were physically protecting the students. At one point, an officer's bike pushed Heim to the ground. I saw red, Morano said. Okay. If you wonder why I'm laughing, it's because I never believe a thing these people say. They always lie. Marxists always lie. I do not believe anything they say. So when you're telling me a bike pushed them to, what were you doing? And by the way, it's not a them, it's a she. Haim is a she. The relationships the 49 terminated staff members had with students, the trust and the rapport to navigate intense, nuanced situations safely was something that UT leadership didn't have, Morano said. Do you hear what's happening in this paragraph? Morano's saying, if you guys hadn't cut your DEI programs, you need us. We could have alleviated and prevented all this. No, you wouldn't have. You're part of the riot. You're siding with the rioters. Like, how are you going to mediate this? You're going to make it worse. I'm glad they cut you before this happened. But she continues, the misstep of consulting support staff could have made the difference in de-escalating tensions at the protests, she believes. No, it wouldn't. All you do is escalate. That's all you do. You escalate woke. You don't de-escalate it. You escalate it. Quote, they let go the very people who could have stopped this, Morano said. Bullshit. Bullshit. That action could have been stopped. No, it would have been worse. And you know what? You would have flounced out and been like, I'm on strike. And classes won't go on. You would have made it worse. More than 130 people, including dozens of students, were arrested in total at the April 24th and 29th protests. All criminal trespassing charges were later dropped. Morano held her mental health workshop after the April 24th protest, despite the exhaustion she felt. So, what a martyr. And it became a reflecting place for students to process what had happened that day. Haim, who was at a rally for DEI at the UT Tower when the second protest and surprise encampment, see, they admit it was an encampment, broke out on April 29th. Of course she was. Of course she was at a DEI rally. That's what you do when you're a DEI shill and grifter. Canceled a doctor's appointment to stay and protect students and their right to free speech. Free speech is really different than a right to encampment. It really is. They handed out water. They're talking about she, handed out water and afterwards visited a student who was taken to a hospital for heat-related injuries. A week later, on July 5th, Haim rolled out of bed feeling hopeless, weighted by the heaviness of the recent events and mourning what was taken. But when they feel like this, they remember why it matters to share their story. It's she. When she feels like this, she remembers why it matters to share her story, to share what the work meant and how it was lost. It was all lost. Quote, I want the students to be able to find what the center was, Haim said. I want there to be a record for how do we build this again, like build this back, right? I'm going to stop here. This goes on and on and on. This is a very long piece. I've read, I think, the most interesting parts, but it goes on. It just basically, this is basically sort of turning these 4 DEI staff members into false victims. As we saw in the piece, it's lots of tears. It's the author here at the Austin American Statesman herself uses the woke language. So she is part of the cult that she's reporting on. There's not even an attempt at being unbiased. Conservatives are presented as some boogeyman antagonist, and DEI is it's a given that DEI is good. It's a good thing. And this is all bad. This is happening. So that's the media for you. Kevin Anderson, thank you so much. Gifted 10 Deprogrammed memberships. So if you got one of those from Kevin, be sure and thank him. Thank you, Kevin, for supporting Deprogrammed. And also, Superbased became a new member himself. Superbased, there you go. Thank you, Superbased. Did I miss any? And Superbased gifted 5 more Deprogrammed memberships. I so appreciate this. If you guys like Deprogrammed, I don't say it enough, but if you like it and you want to help support it so we can one day steal Mystery Chris away permanently from his full-time gig so he can be here doing comedy videos and other things with us. If you want to support Deprogram, you can do so here at YouTube, or you can do so at Subscribestar, Patreon, or Locals. There are links in the header, I believe, here at YouTube. Russ, I missed you. Did I miss you? Hold on. I don't know. Sorry, if I missed you, I'll try and find it. I'm not sure if you're talking to me. Ingrid says, I'm thankful my friend turned me onto your podcast. Thank you. Well, welcome. And I'm glad your friend did too. I'm very glad you're here. And then Arnawa says, here's an idea. Talk to Kenny Xu about this Texas bill. I would love to. I love Kenny Xu. I've had him on before. That's a good idea. I'll reach out to him. Okay, so that's the UT Austin piece. Now or the Austin American Statesman piece. I subscribed. I paid money to them so I could read that whole thing. It's worth it though. It was only $10 for the year, and I'm sure I'm going to want to read more pieces. And the old login, somebody had given me a login. It wasn't working anymore, so I just figured I would do it. So I do want to pay more attention to what's happening locally, and I'm very proud of Texas. And now I want to talk to you about the bill. I think we still have some other things pulled up, but let's just go straight to the bill. Here, let me share this with you. Actually, for those who are late, first let me share this with you. This is where the victim in that piece, the faux victim, Alicia Morano, ended up. Alicia Morano is now at Trinity University in San Antonio, which is a private university. It used to be a Christian university started by Presbyterians, but now it is a thoroughly woke indoctrination center. There she is, super happy about it. And this is all about Trinity University is named Alicia Morano, PhD. Look, there's her pronouns, they, she. That's when you're such a narcissist, you want to be like very extra confusing so people don't know when they're using the right one. No, you don't even have the respect to say they, them, or she, her. You got to mix them up, they, she. What a narcissist. They, she. Okay. As the new director for student inclusion and belonging, more of this bullshit. And it says, as part of a minor reorganization within student affairs, the previous office of student inclusion, belonging, and engagement is now divided into two distinct offices. So they're just growing and growing their DEI crap here, their expenses, their costs, the staff numbers here at Trinity University, just making it bigger. They got two departments now. So now they've got the Student Inclusion and Belonging Office, which will be led by Morano, and they've got the Student Engagement and Development Office, which will be managed by Willis Brown. The office that Morano's in charge of at Trinity will focus on inclusion and equity programming. Of course it is. It's focusing on woke Marxism, on social justice ideology. It's focusing on equity. It's focusing on racial and sex-based discrimination, on racist indoctrination. That's what it's teaching. So what's funny about this article here where they're announcing her at Trinity, when they're talking about her, they go back and forth between, they actually do go back and forth between using they and she, almost like they really had to think hard about it to show that they're complying and they're using both. Look at this. Here's a good example. These two paragraphs. Can you see those? The first paragraph says, Morano joins us from the University of Texas, Austin, where they directed impactful programs such as Monarch, blah, blah, blah. Okay, look at the next paragraph. Morano received her doctorate. I didn't see her up there in the pronouns, Trinity. I saw she, they. You got her here. Morano received her doctorate. Blah, blah, blah. She received her bachelor's degree. Now look at the very next sentence. Outside of their professional life, they're back to there. So they go from they to her to she to their. Just absolute confusion and absurdity and ridiculous. This is a ridiculous religion. This is the religion of abusers who like to control. This is a controlling person who does this. Who's like, you're going to call me she, they, and you're going to jump through those hoops for me. And the university's like, yes, let me tap dance for you some more. She, her, they, like, I want to get them all in there. Controlling person. Teresa says, I'm getting a headache. Yes. Because there's too many pronouns. Russ Williams says, they said it was utterly retarded. The article did not correctly refer to she as they desired. Yes. ADL 1992. Hey, ADL, how are you doing? For $4.99, thank you for the super chat. Says, I am concerned about the connection between DEI and disability services. So am I. That's probably something I could look into for a future episode, because I suspect that there's money being diverted from actual disadvantaged students and disability services into this just ever expanding and growing DEI grift. That would be my gut instinct that that's happening. WG, hey WG, thank you for the generous super chat for $50. Thank you. Says, Moreno's therapist may have helped she, but her hairdresser ain't doing her any favors. Oh, come on, WG. She just went in there and said, give me the Rachel Maddow. And then coming right up, sir, then. Thank you very much for the super chat and supporting the channel. And then Ingrid Cater for $5 with a super sticker. I can't see what the sticker is, Ingrid, but I appreciate you supporting Deprogrammed. Thank you for being here. Also, look at that. My husband's here. I think he's beaming in to us from the gym, possibly. Hello. My husband has been working his butt off this month. I should give a shout out to my husband. We were on that month-long tour, and then we got back, and he basically, well, he didn't get back the day I did. He was out on the road for a few days longer doing shows, and then he was basically home for 2 days and then back on the road for like another 4 days. So he's finally home, and I'm just very grateful for him. If you come into my chat, sometimes I'm going to get sappy, Anthony. So very grateful for my husband. Okay. Let's just look. Let's spend a little bit of time looking at SB 17, because this is the thing that they're all hysterical about. And this is the legislation that was introduced in Texas that made it illegal for public universities to spend taxpayer dollars on this kind of DEI exclusionary. It's actually very exclusionary indoctrination and on racist discrimination. And so they're always going on and on and on about it, and they've never read it. So we're going to skim through this and look at some of the highlights. Real Raven has a joke. Your husbands are here. It's they. It's they, him. The they pronouns just really crack me up. I will never use them in seriousness ever. Okay, so this is SB 17 in Texas on the screen. Now, I totally suggest, if you talk to people, just like with the so-called "Don't Say Gay" bill in Florida, which is not a "Don't Say Gay" bill. That's just what they call it when they haven't read it. They listen to their echo chamber. They listen to the propaganda from the corporate mainstream media, the woke media. So I like to ask them whenever they talk about that, what in this bill, that so-called "Don't Say Gay" bill that you're referring to it as, what in it do you disagree with? Can you tell me exactly what part? And they don't even know. The comedian Patton Oswalt, I asked him that once on Twitter. I didn't insult him. I didn't mock him, anything. I just said, can you tell me which part of the bill you oppose specifically? And he blocked me. So they don't know. They can't say it. They just rather avoid that. And it's the same thing with SB 17. If anybody comes at you and you want to have this conversation with anyone who's criticizing these DEI bans, ask them. Read the bill first and then ask them what part you disagree with. And I'm telling you, 99.9% of the time, they don't know what they're talking about and they can't tell you what's in the bill. Okay. Let's go through this. A bill to be entitled an act relating to public higher education reform, authorizing administrative penalties. Now, this is specifically just about public universities. Public universities, meaning taxpayer funded, meaning we pay for them. The public pays for them through taxes. So that's why it affected UT Austin and not the private college Trinity University, for example. So we're going to scroll on down, and it says, in addition to powers and duties specifically granted by this code or other law, each governing board shall establish for each institution under its control and management goals consistent with the role and mission of the institution. Should also appoint the chancellor or other chief executive officer of the system if the board governs a university system. Should appoint the president or other chief executive officer of each institution under the board's control and management and evaluate the chief executive officer of each component institution and assist the officer in the achievement of performance goals. Should restrict the membership of a search committee for the position of president or other chief executive officer of an institution under the board's control and management to members of the governing board. So if they form a search committee to look for a president or some other kind of CEO, they want it to be members of the governing board who are doing that. Should also approve or deny the hiring of a person for the position of vice president, provost, associate, or assistant provost, dean, or associate, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Should set campus admission standards consistent with the role and mission of the institution, and considering the admission standards of similar institutions nationwide having a similar role and mission as determined by the coordinating board. Should approve or deny each course in the core curriculum as that term is defined by section 61.821 at each institution under the board's control management. Should approve or deny each posting or other advertisement for a tenured faculty position at each institution, et cetera, et cetera. Should ensure that its formal position on matters of importance to the institutions under its governance is made clear, et cetera. Okay, now we're getting into the stuff that they don't like about this. We're getting into section 2. Subchapter L, prohibitions regarding ideological oaths or statements. Ideological oaths or statements. Purpose. The purpose of this subchapter is to prohibit institutions of higher education from requiring or giving preferential consideration for certain ideological oaths or statements that undermine academic freedom and open inquiry and impede the discovery, preservation, and transmission of knowledge. So you guys understand what that means, right? I'm sure you do. It means this is to stop universities that are funded with taxpayer dollars from requiring that people be of a certain ideology, a certain belief system, like a woke belief system, requiring that they be of that belief system or make certain utterances or to state certain held opinions or make oaths, pledging allegiance, showing allegiance to that ideology, that you can't say that you have to be woke, basically, to work here. And you can't give preferential treatment to people who are woke. But if you notice in this part, they don't get very specific. They mean all ideologies. So equally, this would apply to a public university being funded with taxpayer dollars cannot give preferential treatment, for example, to someone with a Christian ideology. They can't be like, you're going to get treated better here. You might get more likely to be hired if you're Christian than if you're not. They can't do that with woke. They can't do it with Christianity. They can't do it with Islam. They can't do it with any ideology or belief system. They can't discriminate on the basis of ideology, basically. So it continues. Definitions. In this subchapter, coordinating board means the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. Institution of higher education has the meaning assigned by section 61. Prohibitions regarding ideological oaths or statements. An institution of higher education may not, number one, may not compel, require, induce, or solicit a student enrolled at the institution, an employer contractor of the institution, or an applicant for admission to or employment or contracting at the institution to. So basically, if you work there, or if you're a student there, or if you're applying to work there or be a student there, they cannot do the following things. They cannot compel, require, induce, or solicit you to endorse an ideology that promotes the differential treatment of an individual or group of individuals on the race, based on race, color, or ethnicity. So here they get more specific about what kind of ideology. They cannot compel you or require you to endorse an ideology that promotes the differential treatment on the basis of race. That's what they're saying. This university, it's getting public money, so it cannot compel you to say that you're part of and to show them that you're part of this ideology that teaches that we should treat people differently on the basis of race. So what kind of ideologies would this apply to? Well, this part would apply to any ideology that promotes differential treatment on the basis of race. So what ideologies would those be? Well, white supremacy is one. But that's pretty laughable. I can't think of any white supremacist university that pushes white supremacist ideology where you got to be a white supremacist to get in a public university. I cannot think of that. What else? What other ideologies does it apply to? Woke, my old belief system, which is very popular and which a lot of universities are thoroughly woke. It does the same thing as white supremacy. It says you should judge and treat people differently on the basis of what race they're in. It does that. If it didn't do that, they wouldn't care about this, right? Because it doesn't name the ideology. It doesn't say the university can't compel you to endorse woke, okay? No, it says it can't compel you to endorse an ideology that promotes differential treatment based on race. They wouldn't care, except that they know their ideology promotes differential treatment based on race. They know this applies to them. They know they can't do that anymore. This is why they're angry. This is why they're angry. Anybody who's actually not racist, actually anti-racist, I know they lie and call themselves anti-racist when they're pushing and teaching racism. If you're actually against racism, you don't have a problem with this statement. You look at this statement, you go, yes, obviously, a university should not be using taxpayer money to force you to say you're a part of a belief system that's okay with racism, that's okay with treating people differently on the basis of race. They're mad because that's what they do. That's their bread and butter. That's at the core of what they teach. And it's saying you can't do that anymore. You can't. Hey, guess what? Hey, guess what? Don't be racist. That's what this is. That's the don't be racist clause. You can't be racist with public money. And they're like, wah! Oh no, what did they call it in the Austin American Statesman? This is a travesty. This is crushing careers. All it's said so far, don't be racist. Oh no, right? Okay, let's continue. That university that receives taxpayer funds in Texas also may not compel, require, induce, or solicit. They may not compel you to provide a statement of your race, your color, your ethnicity, or national origin, except to record any necessary demographic information. So they can't make you tell them that. They hate this too. Why do they hate this? They want to know very much like what race you are. They need to know. Why? Because they're racist. They want to know how they're going to treat you. Your race is very important to them. They want to know if they're going to give you preferential treatment or if they're going to discriminate against you. They need to know what race you are. Why else would you oppose this? This is like the opinion piece that went around. So there was this whole push. I think it was in the aughts, because time moves quickly, but there was this push where liberals were saying we should have blind auditions to music schools like Juilliard and stuff. Like, you don't need to know the race or sex of somebody who's playing the violin. You just need to listen to the violin, and you decide if the student gets in based on how they play, right? And that's a very liberal idea. And so they instituted these blind auditions, and it was great. And then they found out, after looking at it for a period of years, that when they started doing blind auditions, that the numbers of women and people of color declined slightly. So then all these leftists, not liberals, leftists came back and said, we have to get rid of the blind auditions. We have to know the race and sex of these people when they play violin. We have to know. Why? Because we want to admit them on the basis of race and sex. That's leftism in a nutshell. That's not liberalism, it's leftism. They are racist, they are sexist. And so this SB 17 says, okay, if you are a taxpayer-funded public university, you cannot force any employees or students or prospective employees or students from telling you their race. Can't force it. Well, they hate that, right? They also, the university cannot compel you to provide a statement of your views on experience with or past or planned contributions to efforts involving diversity, equity, and inclusion, marginalized groups, so-called anti-racism, social justice, intersectionality, or related concepts. These are all cult words. This is very smart of them to put this in here. This is all part of the woke cult. This is all my old ideology, social justice, woke ideology, intersectionality. It's all the same thing. It's all part of the same thing. And they picked out some keywords from that dictionary, that lexicon, that woke lexicon, and they put them in here and said, look, the university can't force you to say what you think about these things. They can't force you to do that, because that's very similar to number one up here. They'd be trying to figure out what your ideology is. They want to compel an oath from you. They want you to basically pledge allegiance to these concepts. They want to know what you think about it. They want to know if you're woke or not, basically. The university does. And this bill says, no, you can't do that. You can't force a student or employee or potential student or potential employee to have to answer questions about what they think about these things. They don't have to answer that. Because that's another loyalty oath. That's trying to figure out if you're woke or not. It would be like saying, if you told a university they can't require, like a public university, they can't require that students be Christian, okay? But then having to have a second bullet point that says, and you can't require that potential students answer questions about what they think about Jesus' resurrection. You know, like trying to ask questions to figure out if they're Christian or not. You can't do that. That's what this is saying. You can't compel them to answer questions about whether they're woke or not. Okay, that continues. The university cannot compel them to have to make a statement provide a statement on their views or experience with race, color, ethnicity, national origin, or other immutable characteristics, right? You can't make them provide a statement about that, their views on that. And the university cannot provide preferential consideration to a student enrolled at the institution, or an employee or a contractor of the institution, or an applicant for admission to or for employment or contracting at the institution on the basis of the person's unsolicited statement in support of an ideology described by subdivision A. So you cannot give them preferential treatment based on whether or not they're part of the woke ideology. You can't do that. So like if the student, their unsolicited statement, right? So if the student, the prospective employee of their own free will offers this up, like in an essay or something, they manage to work it in there about marginalized student, or, they let you know, they use the right cult words, so they're part of the cult. Well, this says you still can't give them preferential treatment. Now that they're woke, you still can't do that. Okay, it continues. This section may not be construed to restrict academic research or coursework. So it's telling you right here, because they're always saying, oh, they're banning research and they're banning, learning. No, they're not. This can't be construed to restrict academic research or coursework. It can't prevent a person from providing to an institution of higher education information described by subsection A on the person's own initiative, like if they want to give that information up, separate from any specific requirement or request from the institution. It cannot prevent an institution of higher education from requiring an applicant for admission to or employment or contracting at the institution to disclose or discuss the content of their research or artistic creations. So it cannot prevent the university from requiring you to tell them what you studied, like the content of your research. And maybe your research is woke, and so that's how they find out you're woke. But it can't stop them from doing that. Of course, they need to know what your research was in. It cannot prevent the institution from certifying compliance with state and federal anti-discrimination laws. That's great. It cannot prevent the university from discussing pedagogical approaches or experience with students and learning disability. That's great. No later than December 1st of each year, each institution of higher education shall submit to the Lieutenant Governor and the Speaker of the House of Representatives a report certifying the institution's compliance with this section. Okay, we're moving on to Section 3, subchapter, the section on diversity, equity, inclusion offices and employees prohibited. So they define some terms. Coordinating board means the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. Diversity, equity, inclusion office means an office, division, or other unit of an institution of higher education established for the purpose of A, influencing hiring or employment practices at the institution with respect to race, sex, color, or ethnicity, other than through the use of colorblind and sex-neutral hiring processes in accordance with any applicable state and federal anti-discrimination laws. So they're basically saying, you guys got to stop doing racist and sexist discrimination when you hire, because you are breaking the state and federal anti-discrimination laws. Like, they're calling it out. You can't do that anymore. You have to be colorblind and sex neutral when you hire. You cannot give preferential treatment on the basis of race or sex. You cannot discriminate against other people on the basis of their race or sex. You got to stop doing that. That's what this says. And the woke are pissed. But we love discriminating on the basis of race and sex. We love it. That's what we do. How can you not let us do what we do? They're so upset by this. We have to comply with state and federal anti-discrimination laws. They're like, what? But we are racist and sexist. Okay, continuing. Promoting differential treatment of or providing special benefits to individuals on the basis of race, color, ethnicity. You can't do that anymore. Can't do that anymore. Promoting policies or procedures designed or implemented in reference to race, color, or ethnicity, other than policies or procedures approved in writing by the institution's general counsel and the Office of the Attorney General for the sole purpose of ensuring compliance with any applicable court order or state or federal law. Okay, sounds good. Conducting trainings, programs, or activities designed or implemented in reference to race, color, ethnicity, gender identity, or sexual orientation. So you got to stop doing this. You can't be conducting trainings, programs, or activities that are centered around like identity. These different, like, discriminating and dividing people up and doing it based on race and sex and sexuality. Okay, then it even gives a caveat: other than trainings, programs, or activities developed by an attorney and approved in writing by the institution's general counsel and the Office of the Attorney General for the sole purpose of ensuring compliance with any applicable court order or state or federal law. So this means those kind of things they were doing, where they would be like, we're going to have a DEI training, but just for the white staff, right? And you got to show up and learn about your white privilege and everything. They can't do that anymore. They can't do the indoctrination sessions where they're like, we're going to have a training about racism, but it's just for people of color. White people, you can't come. And you're going to go there as a person of color and learn how you're an oppressed minority and white people have privilege and you don't. And, you know, you got to work with allies, all this stuff. Like, you can't do these racist indoctrination sessions anymore where you divide people up and you segregate people. They hate that. The woke hate that. They love those things. Okay, so it continues. Institution of higher education has the meaning assigned by section 61.003. An institution of higher education may not establish or maintain a diversity, equity, and inclusion office or hire or assign an employee of the institution or contract with a third party to perform the duties of a diversity, equity, and inclusion office. So you can't even bring an outside DEI person. Excellent, excellent. They're going to rename it, by the way. They're going to get around this. They're going to rename it. They might put belonging in the title, but DEI is going to fall out of favor and they're going to come up with another name. It's going to be the same woke racist indoctrination. But for right now, they say it can't be called that anyway. Subsection may not be construed to restrict academic course instruction or research or creative works by an institution of higher education students or faculty. It may not restrict the activities of student organizations registered with or recognized by an institution of higher education. So they can still do student groups if they want with these names. It may not restrict the guest speakers or performers who may be invited to speak or perform. So you can bring in these woke people, which I'm sure they still will. It may not restrict health services provided by licensed professionals at an institution of higher education. It may not restrict services provided by appropriate professionals at the institution of higher education to veterans of the armed forces or persons with a physical or cognitive disability. It may not restrict an institution of higher education's ability to respond to a request for information from a grant-making agency or athletic association. It may not restrict the university's ability to collect data or prohibit an institution of higher education from establishing or maintaining a legal office or other unit, or hiring or assigning an employee as an attorney, or contracting with a third-party attorney. It goes on and on and on about all the stuff it doesn't restrict, right? It can't restrict the university from establishing or maintaining an academic department that does not establish policy or procedures for other departments. It can't restrict them from registering or recognizing student organizations. Like, again, students can organize. Nothing in this section may be construed as prohibiting bona fide qualifications based on sex that are reasonably necessary to the normal operation of an institution of higher education. Any person may notify the Attorney General of a violation or potential violation of this section by an institution of higher education. The Attorney General may file suit. So it goes on about what can happen if they're breaking this bill, this law. If an institution of higher education determines that an employee of the institution has violated this section, then the institution shall take the following action against the employee. For the first violation, place the employee on unpaid leave for a year. For the second or subsequent violation, discharge the employee. Report the determination and the action taken by the institution to the coordinating board. The coordinating board shall maintain and provide to each institution of higher education a list of persons against whom action has been taken. An institution of higher education may not hire an employee who is included on that list, who's already had action taken against them. If the employee was placed on unpaid leave at the end of the academic year for which the employee is placed on unpaid leave, if the employee was discharged under subsection the 5th anniversary of the date in which the employee was discharged, blah, blah, blah. These are all the things that will happen if you break this. If you try and sneak DEI in. I love this. Okay. We've read through most of what it's telling you cannot have. This part here is something to be included. Statements required to be included in mission statements, bylaws, faculty handbooks, and student handbooks. This is for public schools in Texas. And so it says they should all have a mission statement that includes or incorporates into the institutional mission statement the following statements in whole. So they want public universities that are receiving taxpayer funds to include these things in their mission statement. We affirm that our institution will educate students by means of free, open, and rigorous intellectual inquiry to seek the truth. We affirm our duty to equip students with the intellectual skills they need to reach their own informed conclusions on matters of social and political importance. We affirm the value of viewpoint diversity, lots of different opinions, right, in campus intellectual life, including in faculty recruitment and hiring. We affirm our duty to ensure that no aspects of this institution's life, in or outside the classroom, require, favor, disfavor, or prohibit speech or action that supports any political, social, or religious belief. We affirm our commitment to create a community dedicated to civil and free inquiry that respects the intellectual freedom of each member, supports individual capacities for growth, and tolerates the differences in opinion that naturally occur in a public university community, or that should naturally occur. We affirm the value of institutional neutrality, that institutions of higher education should not take collective positions on political and social controversies of the day. These values take priority over any other value we may also adopt. These are great. These are great. I mean, it's one thing writing it down and saying you affirm these things as a university, but it's another thing getting rid of the people who object to this, getting rid of the people over time who are of a completely different belief system and ideology, and a very totalitarian belief system and ideology. Like woke allows for nothing else. Woke, it's like you're woke or they consider you an unperson, like a bigot. You know, you're not worth, you have to be part of their cult. And so just an experience with having had woke people destroy hobby groups that you know I've researched and interviewed people in, having seen woke destroy companies and institutions and churches. Like you have to get rid of those people. So I applaud what they did, cutting their DEI department. I applaud them, and I think this article from the Austin American Statesman today was really funny. And I appreciate you guys sitting through it with me. And thank you for looking at SB 17 with me, taking a look at it. Anybody who says they oppose this DEI bill in Texas, ask them what part of that do they disagree with? Is it the part that says you may not be racist in your hiring and admitting students? Is it that part? What part do you disagree with? Right? See what they say. Randy, hey Randy, for $5. Randy Wallen says this has been going on forever, well before woke. Liberals, in quotes, at Stanford, etc., instituted race-specific graduations 40 plus years ago. Racists all the way down. I believe you. It has a head start in certain locations for sure. Like Stanford, absolutely. It's just what has impressed me. Impressed me. I don't know if that's the right word, but astounded me is how quickly it spread to the red states and to childhood education, to K through 12. It basically was at these elite institutions for a long time, percolating, and then it seemed like it was overnight, but it wasn't. It was because they were training generations of people like myself to go out and spread woke. And once we all got into these career positions, like a lot of those people went into education, they went into early childhood education, and they started spreading it there. And then it was as if it was overnight. You've got the middle school in Georgetown, Texas, teaching about, 23 different sexualities and having 10-year-olds paint different sexuality flags on a red poppy mural. Like that's in Georgetown, Texas at Forbes Middle School, 10-year-olds. Crazy. Crazy. I'm getting a little bit hoarse, so I'm going to wrap this up. I apologize. I don't know if it's from all the sanding and stuff happening here right now or just from talking a lot, but I'm going to wrap this up. I appreciate you guys going through that article with me today, and it's cause for celebration. If you're in Texas, we rooted it out of UT Austin. I mean, I'm sure they're going to try and hide it in various ways, but this was a huge step forward. And the fact that the Austin American Statesman is mourning today and crying about it, like we should be celebrating. This is a great thing. We're not spending 13 million of our taxpayer dollars on racist indoctrination anymore. It's a wonderful thing. And I hope that other people from other states see that. And if they are woke, that they don't want to move here, please don't come here. We don't want you. We don't need cultural missionaries. You would hate it here. You can't even be racist in the public universities. What's the world coming to? What's the world coming to? You can't even be racist here at UT Austin, man. Like you won't like it if you're coming from California, where you're used to being able to be racist and sexist and view everybody, treat people differently on the basis of their identity. You can't do that at Texas public schools. So, plus we all have to wear handmade outfits here. I'm kidding. That last part's a joke. That's what they believe. Some of them believe this. It's oppressive towards women, Texas is. Okay. JB05 for $5. Thank you for the super chat. JB says, a white pill. The Austin American Statesman is owned by Gannett, which is going downhill fast. They had 20,000 employees in 2019. They're only at half of that now. Isn't that amazing? Woke is killing everything. I mean, it's sad, but if you're going to get taken over by this virus, like that's what happens. You're going to go down the drain. I gave them $10 today, so that's going to help them hang on until lunch. Coming up, Tuesday, October 15th, if you want to be a part of Deprogrammed Book Club. We're reading Hillbilly Elegy by J.D. Vance, who it's a topical book because he's currently on the Republican ticket as a vice presidential candidate. And this was also turned into a film where I think it's a time to read it. Many people in the chat have already read it or have already purchased it. So you have until October 15th. If you want to be in the book club, it's a private video chat with all of us. And just drop me an email at deprogrammedpod@gmail.com and say, Keri, I want to be in the Hillbilly Elegy book club, and I will give you the link. It's Tuesday, October 15th at 6 o'clock Central. The other announcement is this Wednesday at 6 o'clock, we are coming back to our regular schedule with That Christian panel every other Wednesday. So this Wednesday at 6 o'clock, we're going to be discussing Matt Walsh's movie, Am I Racist? So you've got a couple days to go see it in the theater if you don't want to be spoiled. It's so fun. I laughed so hard. My husband laughed. Like, I can't wait to talk about it with you guys. So go see it and let me know if you laugh. Like, I can't remember laughing that hard in the theater. It's been a long time. I probably since like Pee Wee Herman, maybe. It's been a long time. Yeah. And I don't think I saw Pee Wee Herman in the theater, but I do laugh out loud at Pee Wee. It's a very funny movie, a mockumentary. Matt Walsh did a great job. Credit where credit is due. And I think you're going to enjoy it. So go see it. Okay, I think that's it for today. I appreciate you guys hanging out. If you like the video, please hit share and like, and it helps the algorithm if you leave a comment. And if you have suggestions on people I should talk to or topics you want me to cover, feel free to leave them in the comments. Therese, thank you so much. Give it up for Therese, one of our mods. Okay, I'll see you guys on Wednesday. If you have time, go see that movie. Have fun. Okay, bye.